Welcome to Microsoft Hates Greg. My name is Greg Deckler, and today I am responding to a public challenge from the one and only Carlos Barboza. So basically, about a week ago, I saw Carlos had been posting some stuff on the Waffle charts, and so I decided to give it a try. And I got some feedback from Nick as well about the use of waffle charts and that sort of thing. So posted a video on it, posted on LinkedIn, and then Carlos came back and said, "Public challenge, Greg. Extend your approach to waffle fourfold and a formula for the conditional coloring per quadrant." And so he has a chart that he developed where basically it's not just one waffle chart; it's four waffle charts, all within a single scatter plot. So I don't know how Carlos did that, but I had to respond to that challenge, right? And so as you can see, I was able to do it. And I'm going to walk through in this video exactly how I did this. So you can see I can, increase, decrease. So each of these quadrants has a separate slicer where I can increase or decrease the amount of waffle. I guess, they reminds me of like four different Connect Four games going on at the same time, right? All right, so how did I do this? So pretty fairly simple and pretty much just an extension of what I did before. So before what I did was I had a table, right? And this is basically, I did a cross join between row and column and, added a rank column, and then add this Q column, right? So basically in this case, I did an add column cross join. I do is generate series 1 to 10, right? I tell it that's row, generate 1 to 10, that's column. I add the Q column and tell it that this is quadrant 1, that's just a category column. And then the rank column is this formula right here, in which I'm just using, if I can get it, but I'm just using the rank function, dense order by the row ascending, order by the column ascending. Okay. The rest of the tables are basically the same thing. It's just that for quadrant 1, right, I'm doing the column, I take the value times -1, right? Because quadrant 2 is over here. So the columns have to be -1, -2, -3, -4, right? And this is going to be quadrant 2. And the rank then, because it is, I have to do row ascending, but column descending, because it's going from -1 to -10. Okay, and so they're basically it's the exact same thing. In this case, because it's quadrant 3, which is down here, right? It's the x-axis is negative and the y-axis is negative. So that's that. And same thing for quadrant 4. This time, right? The rows are negative, right? The y-axis is negative, but the columns are positive, right? Because quadrant 4 is down here. So quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, one thing that you have to be careful of is that if you noticed when I was doing quadrant, see it's column, row, rank, Q, but then for Q3 and Q4, or Q4, oh, that's because I fixed it. Anyway, when I originally created these, and then basically you're going to union them into a single table, right? So I just union all of them up. What I found though with union is not very smart. My Q3 and my Q4 tables, it was column, row, Q, and then rank. And so basically union doesn't care what the columns are called. It's just going to union them together in the order that they are in the original tables. So basically that threw all kinds of stuff into didn't work at first because I had a mixture of Q and rankings, in in my rank and my Q columns, but when I union them together, because they were a little bit out of sequence. So when I originally created this, right? So what I did is, if you can, as you can tell, I took out the Q and I just added it as a column. So I went and added rank and then added Q so that they all had the right um, columns, if you will. So they were in the same order. That's what I'm trying to say. That was one of the biggest issues, right? So essentially, then what you can do is without the color coding, right? If I just go here to a new table and I take here and I say, okay, here's my scatter chart. I can take this combined table and I can put row in my row in my I always get this messed up. Row in my x-axis, column in my y-axis. I may have to change this. This is the biggest thing is keeping these things straight. All right, so here we go. Row 7, row 6. Yes, I got it correct. Row 6. No, it's incorrect. Column, row. So now this should be row 1. All of these are row 1 and the column changes. Okay, so I got that now. So this is what you basically end up with. So here's all the quadrant 1 stuff. Here's all the quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. And then what you need to do is you have to kind of go in here to this x-axis and you have to mess around with this. This needs to be minus 10.5 and then 10.5. You have to do the 0.5 so that the little circles don't get cut off anymore. And then you have to do the same thing. 0.5. Oh, 100. Good job, Greg. Minus 10.5 and 10.5. Right, so that fixes that problem. You just got to give a little bit extra so that all of these things go in here. Now, the next thing that it took me an embarrassing long time to figure out was how to get the quadrant in here. I finally figured out that the only way that I could figure out how to do it is to go in here and add a line and make it black, and then I don't want it to be dashed. I want it to be solid. So you do that. You got an x-axis constant line and you got a y-axis constant line. I tried everything I could think of to try to get this to work, and could not. And so finally, just hit upon this, and so this is how I got the axis to be drawn. Now, if I go back here, then I go formatting. I can turn off my values and my titles. Turn off my values and my titles, right? And so now I've got this, and then you can mess around with the markers a bit. The markers, yeah, this multiplier. I don't know, maybe like 40 or so. It all depends on how big this thing is. That's kind of one of the annoying things with working with the scatter chart is how big you want those markers to be. It really depends. It doesn't dynamically scale it. And there's no ability to like tie it somehow to the size of the chart or anything like that. So that's one of the annoying things, right, with the scatter chart. But anyway, so you just have to kind of play with that little marker stuff. And then for the color, right, the conditional formatting. So what I did, let's just make this easy on ourselves. Don't sync. So basically, so here we got our slicers, right? We want to conditionally format the color on these things. So luckily, right, the conditional formatting is available for the markers. If I get on here to count to this, and then I can say fx, and I can say field value, and I can make it my measure 4. Say OK, and boom, there it is. So now how's this measure work? So the measure is actually fairly straightforward, right? So basically, I'm grabbing the value of my Q1 slicer, value of my Q2 slicer, value of my Q3 slicer, value of my Q4 slicer. I then grab the value, right, for the individual dot in the scatter plot, which is rank. And then I grab what quadrant we're in, right? It's either Q1, Q2, Q3, or Q4. And then, so the result then is just a switch statement. It's just if the quadrant is equal to Q1 and the rank is less than or equal to the Q1 slicer, right? I return, a color code, and then different, same thing for Q2, Q3, Q4. One thing I did that I thought was interesting because I never get a chance to play with transparency. So I could have just, typed in some gray color code, right? But what I did instead was and this made it kind of nice to play with because I don't have to monkey around with the color codes, that and try different things. But so you can use the transparency feature. So you basically have a hashtag. You have your 6 hex digits, right? 0 through 5. There's 0 through F, as far as red, green, and blue, each being 2 digits. And then there's an extra 2 digits at the end, which is a transparency. which can also be from 0 to F, right? So, with a 15, it makes it a nice, so it really starts out as blank, and then I set the transparency to be a very highly transparent, right? And that's what gives me my gray. And so the nice thing about it is I can play around with how dark the gray is by just changing those last two digits, right? So I thought I thought that was kind of a neat use of the transparency feature, which I never get a chance to play with really, but yeah, so that is it. There is um your quad waffle chart, if you will. So that's how I did it. I think it's fairly straightforward. It's basically an extension of what I was doing before. But yeah, so that's all I had for this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.